everyone, Ethan here with another review video for you guys today. So I'm actually reviewing my Dell XPS 13. Now keep in mind this is the XPS 13 9350, so it is the older model with the Skylake instead of the Kaby Lake CPUs. The physical build hasn't changed though, so I figured I'd go ahead and do a review of it anyway. Just keep in mind when I talk about the performance aspects of this, the newer one is a little bit better. Although not greatly so, because the only difference between Skylake and Kaby Lake is a clock speed bump, which they did on pretty much all their mobile SKUs. So you're looking at, an extra 300 megahertz-ish, depending on what's boosting and what's not and stuff. As we know, the clock speeds on laptops, especially Ultrabooks, can be very weird at times. Anyway, point being, this is a little bit of an older one, but I figured I'd go ahead and review it. I actually managed to pick it up for $400 used from a friend, so pretty happy about that. Now, we'll jump straight into the specs of this machine because it's still important, even though it is a little bit more of the outdated model. So mine here is going to be running a Intel i5-6200U Ultrabook SKU processor. The U SKU they use in most of their Ultrabooks. It is a dual-core hyper-threaded i5, so really, I think the i5 name shouldn't be used for dual-core hyper-threads in my opinion. But anyway, it's a dual-core hyper-threaded CPU, enough to get some stuff done. It's got 8 gigabytes of RAM. It's low-power DDR4, I believe. It's got a 256 gig SSD. This is an M.2 SSD. I don't believe it's an NVMe model one, but it is a pretty quick SSD, and didn't need more storage than that, so, whatever. It's got a 1080p matte display. I opted for the matte display, partly because I got this for such a good deal, but also partly because I prefer matte displays. I don't really want a touchscreen on my Ultrabook. If I want a touchscreen, I want it to be a tablet, I want it to be a phone. I don't like touchscreens on my laptop, so I went with this so I can use it in the daylight, and it's a very beautiful display. 1080p is totally fine at the 13-inch screen size. Honestly, sure, 4K would be great, but it's going to run down your battery quicker, and so I think we're a couple of years off of 4K really being super good for Ultrabooks in like the 13, 14-inch form factor. The 1080p display on this is absolutely beautiful, but I'll get a little bit more into that later. Now, we can go over the ports on this machine. It's pretty ported out. It's actually pretty good. So on the left side of the laptop, we've got your power port down here. We've got a Thunderbolt 3 port. This actually is a very important port because this can be used with external graphics docks such as the Razer Core. It isn't certified to work with them, but there have been a lot of people that have talked about it working with it, and there will be others in the future that it'll work with. Plus, it's a very versatile port that you can do a lot of things with. It's got a USB 3.0, a combination headphone microphone jack, as well as a battery life indicator. And then over on the right side, you've got another USB 3.0 and an SD card slot and a Kensington lock port. Now, it's really nice to see an SD card slot on this. Even though this isn't really what I would consider a productivity machine, it is definitely really cool to see a machine of this size sticking with an SD card slot. I'm looking at you, Apple. MacBook Pro without an SD card slot is ridiculous. You look at this, like Dell managed to fit it in this little thing. All right, so don't say you needed more room, because the battery life on this is great too. Now, anyway, I'll go ahead and jump in though to the overall build of this. So the build quality on the Dell XPS 13, and this is true for this one and the newer model, is absolutely stunning and amazing. It is incredibly good build quality. So not only are you looking at an aluminum, mostly aluminum chassis, which a lot of Ultrabooks have, but you've also got a carbon fiber aspect right here under the keyboard. It is real carbon fiber, and it's definitely cool to see a material like carbon fiber on a laptop. It does help prevent it from flexing. It does work really well to keep the keyboard from having any flex, which is something I can appreciate. I don't like it if a keyboard flexes like at all when I'm typing. Now, you've also got a really nice trackpad here. It's a glass trackpad, so it should last a really long time. It doesn't seem to be worn out at all, despite this being about a year old. So that's something nice to see. A lot of the plastic trackpads wear out over time as you use them. The glass ones are not supposed to, plus they feel better. So that's pretty great. The keyboard itself has really solid keys. I tend to wear through keys very quickly on laptops. I don't know if it's how much I type. I don't know if it's how hard I type. But whatever it is, I tend to wear out keyboard, especially the keycaps, very quickly and wear through them. These ones look brand new still. There is no wear and tear on them that I can see at all, other than maybe a few little scuffs that can be wiped away. They are really good keys, and that's an important aspect to the build quality. It feels like the switches are going to hold up really well as well, although that's something that takes many years to find out. 1 year, definitely they're going to hold up. But they do feel very solid. Now, this one does not have Gorilla Glass on it because it is not the touchscreen model, so it is just a matte display. I don't know much myself about the durability of this matte display when it comes to dropping it and stuff like that, but it does feel pretty solid. There isn't a lot of flex in the upper area because of that aluminum backing, so that's also good. So I feel like that would hold up really well. But overall, the build is a 10 out of 10 on this. It's a pretty unique build, and it is incredible. And I think Dell has done a very good job making this a solid machine that should last you for many years. So I don't think you should be really even factoring in what product might be higher quality when you're looking at Ultrabooks. This is about as good as it gets right now at the time of filming. Now, to move on to the design of this, though, which is not so much, you know, build quality and whatnot, but how it looks and aesthetically, how aesthetically pleasing I think it is. Personally, I think it is mostly very beautiful. I think it's a very good looking laptop. The carbon fiber just gives it a nice look, although one complaint I have about that is the coating that's on the carbon fiber is a huge fingerprint magnet. You can wipe them off really easy, but they look like smudges rather than just fingerprints when on there, and it can be pretty ugly at times. So just keep in mind while you're using it, it's gonna start to get kind of nasty. I'd recommend keeping a microfiber cloth around to clean it off. Same with the glass trackpad, although that one doesn't look as bad, although it still looks like a smudge, not just a fingerprint. It looks kind of grody, almost like you got grease on it or something. It's not the case. It's just that's what happens with this. Now, it's a thin machine, but it has plenty of ports on it. I don't think it's overly thin. I actually don't personally like the looks of something that's overly thin because it looks breakable. This doesn't look breakable when you look at it. It looks like it's gonna last. It's really nice, actually, and I like the aluminum. I like the silver. You can get it in gold, and I think possibly one other color now. I'm not sure right now. But this one here was the silver model, which I think was the only color that they offered actually on the 9350 versus the 9360, which is the newer one with the Kaby Lake CPU. But it is definitely good looking. I like the silver myself. The gold, my buddy has one. It actually is really good looking as well. So I just decided, though, I like silver better myself. That's all to, you know, your opinion there. Now, bottom of it has two large rubber feet that do get kind of grody, but they don't seem to wear off, so that's something just to keep in mind. You've got your fan output right here, but overall it's a pretty streamlined looking bottom piece here. It's mostly aluminum, and it is removable, but yeah, it definitely is nice to see that on a machine. Overall, I think the design is just incredible on this. It is really good. The backlit keyboard is incredible. The glass trackpad is incredible. It does look great, and the Infinity Edge display really looks good. It's something that gives it a little bit of a unique appeal. I think aesthetically it is one of the best choices Dell has gone with, and I think that more companies should do this. I am sick of large bezels just because they look ugly. It's as simple as that. And, you know, they might give you a little bit more, you know, I feel like that space should be used up on some of them. And so here you don't feel like you're like, well, they could have made it a 14-inch. You know, this is as big as it could have gotten. And that's nice for this form factor. So you're actually getting about a 12-inch form factor here because of that Infinity Edge display, albeit a little bit deeper than the 12-inch form factor laptops, but, you know, definitely pretty cool to see that. Now, another thing that I want to mention, though, about design before we move on to the performance and conclusion portions of this video, there's one thing that I despise about the design of this machine, and this has been talked about so much, and I understand mostly why Dell did it, but it still sucks because this is a productivity machine. You probably all already know what I'm going to talk about. The webcam. It's right down in this corner here, and even worse, the microphone's down here. So the webcam's down here. It is a little bit of an eyesore. Now, it also is a very bad place for it in general, but I don't think it looks good. I think it is actually kind of noticeable, and you're like, why is there a little dot down there? It doesn't look symmetrical, and I don't like that. But also, the other big issue that comes into place when you have the webcam down that low, and especially the microphone, is the webcam's looking up your nose when you're looking at it. Now, of course, you could bend your neck down and look at the webcam, but then it feels weird because you can't really see the screen. That's why they normally put them in the middle top here, but the bezel is so thin that they couldn't fit that in there without making the bezel thicker. Now, the microphone being down there is terrible because all your freaking typing noise is pumped right into the microphone. So it sounds like garbage, and honestly, it's not a bad quality microphone. It's just whenever you touch the keyboard, all of a sudden it sounds like crap. And that's something that's a little bit frustrating in my opinion, and probably to a lot of others. I think that they probably could have fit the microphone up here, maybe without even making the bezel any thicker if they just run a wire up to the top with the little microphone up here. They're very small. I would have preferred at least the microphone up there, just because that way it's not going to pick up all my keyboard noise. But, you know, it's, you know, do you want an infinity edge display, as they call it, a thin bezel, or do you want a good placed webcam? That's a decision you're going to have to make. But if you're going to use this as a very much so business machine where you're going to be video chatting with people a lot, or even just voice chatting, I would say probably move to something else, but only if you're going to be doing it enough that it's going to affect you. You know, you're video chatting once a week, that's probably not the end of the world. You know, you're doing it a couple times a day, yeah, you don't want to go with this. Now, performance-wise, this machine is actually a bit of a mixed bag to me. It's really good mostly, but there are a few things that I feel are a little bit lacking, in particular on my model. So first things first is I will say the i5-6200U is plenty of power in this form factor. I don't feel like the CPU is very limiting in most cases. It can even do some video editing, albeit rendering takes forever, but it can video edit kind of smoothly with Cineform footage at 1080p. So, you know, a little bit of a you know, stress on it there. That's definitely not what this machine is built for, not that kind of productivity. But I feel like it's plenty of performance for this machine, and the battery life is just incredible. Honestly, I'd say go with the i5 model, even if you're going with the 9360 instead of the i7 model. Save yourself a couple $100 because it is plenty of power. So just wanted to point that out. Now, my model here has 8 gigs of RAM, and for me, that is actually a limit. I personally have a lot of tabs open on Chrome, have a lot of programs open at once, all kinds of stuff, and 8 gigs of RAM is pretty limiting, because like on my desktop over here, I have, my laptop desktop replacement, I have 40 gigabytes of RAM, and I'm going to be upping that to 64 soon because I'm using up most of it, and so 8 is a pretty big limit to me. To some people that are just having a couple tabs open, watching a video, maybe, you know, Skyping with somebody, it's going to be totally fine with 8 gigs of RAM. It is not upgradable though. It is soldered on RAM, so keep that in mind. You're not going to be able to upgrade this to 16. But, you know, like I said, I got this for a good deal, so I decided to not worry about having 8 gigs of RAM and having an SSD as your page file, as your basically RAM overflow helps a lot. And so it's not too terrible, but once it starts getting used up, it starts to be a little bit noticeably slower, albeit still faster than what a hard drive machine would do, even if it had a good amount of RAM. Now, mine has a 256 gig SSD. It is a pretty quick SSD. I didn't benchmark it with Crystal Disk Mark like I normally would with a machine, but I think it's plenty fast. For this type of machine, I'm not really worried about having the best performing SSD. I just need to at least have a SSD, because having no SSD sucks. Now, it's an M.2 SSD. That is the one thing on this machine that is upgradable. You can take off the bottom. You can upgrade it to up to a 1 terabyte, I think, is currently the biggest you can go, SSD. So if you do need more storage space, if you are going to use this for basic video editing, then, you know, you're going to probably want to go with a bigger SSD than the 256. Definitely don't put a 128 in here. I don't even know if you can configure it with that anymore, but I would definitely not do that, because 128 is going to be very limiting. Now, the keyboard and trackpad, when it comes to their performance, is incredible. The trackpad experience is among the best I have ever experienced, other than on a MacBook. Theirs still is just the best. Apple knows what they're doing with trackpads, but I'd say it's pretty close. It's really good sized actually for a 13-inch Ultrabook, and especially in a 12-inch form factor. It's a good sized trackpad. I think it's plenty of space, and it works good for basically daily use. But the keyboard, my goodness, the keyboard on this is just amazing. It's not as good as a mechanical keyboard, but it's as close as you're going to get on a laptop. It is a really good keyboard. It's got great travel distance. It's really comfortable to type on. It's backlit, which is personally extremely important to me, because I use all my stuff at night a lot. But it is just, the typing experience on this does not feel like you're typing on a 13-inch, yet alone a 12-inch body. It feels like you're typing on something that would be more like the 15 to 17-inch range. Just everything is so well spaced. The key travel is perfect. There's no flex at all thanks to the carbon fiber. It is super solid. And so if you're looking for something that you're going to be typing a lot of documents on, don't go any further than this, because this is about as good as it gets. At least this is as good as it gets out of every laptop keyboard I've ever typed on, other than massive machines like my laptop over here that weighs 16 pounds. So I mean, when it comes to Ultrabooks and thin lights, and even most, you know, gaming and thicker machines like 17 inches, this beats most of them out. It is a very good keyboard, so that's something that's super awesome to see. So to move on with that though, I've also got really good speakers in here. There's not a ton of bass, but it's there and it's not distorted, and they're very loud. So I just wanted to mention that to people if you're using this as a media consumption machine, especially if you want to watch movies, to, sitting, with your, girlfriend or whatever, next to each other with a laptop in your lap or whatever. It is going to do great on, and it's even enough, honestly, to fill a fairly good sized room with like music or something. So you could use it for that as well. Very good speakers on this. The best I've heard in a 13-inch form factor. Definitely not the best laptop speakers I've heard, but anything better than this is usually in the 15 and up category. So this is a very good. One thing I feel like is missing is a dedicated subwoofer, but what are you going to do in this form factor, right? Now, the display is incredible on this. I mentioned that earlier, but everything is just so sharp. It feels better than a 1080p display. It's weird, and I don't know what's up with that. And I know for a fact it's 1080p, but it feels sharper than a 1080p display. Maybe it's just because the colors are maybe a little more saturated, a little more vibrant. It's probably not the most color accurate display out there. It's a little bit poppy and stuff, so you want to do some color calibration if you were going to be doing web work on it or something that required a lot of color accuracy. But for media consumption and for general use, it is a wonderful display. You'll be very happy with the 1080p resolution. Honestly, I feel like going with the i5 1080p model is the model that everybody should be going with, because you're not getting a big performance boost from that extra i7 CPU, and honestly, more than 1080p is not necessary on here unless you really need the touchscreen, because I don't believe they offer a 1080p touchscreen model. I think mattes better. That's what I prefer. Now, probably the most important performance aspect of an Ultrabook, an ultralight machine by any means at all, is the battery life. And at first, the battery life on this was kind of bad. But I did some research and I was wondering, I was only getting like 3-4 hours, and so was my friend that had it beforehand. He was only getting a couple of hours of battery life, which was really weird because, well, first off, a lot of reviews have been rating the battery life on this to be really good, but also that's really bad for a Ultrabook, SKU processor. There's a BIOS update that you need to download. So make sure if you get this is for the 9350. I believe the 9360, the newer one with Kaby Lake, that's all already fixed from the factory. And maybe even some of the 9350s have been updated from the factory. So if you're buying like a brand new inbox one, say off eBay or something, it might already be updated, but you're going to want to check for BIOS updates on this machine, because the BIOS update about tripled or even close to quadrupled my battery life. Now, some people have been reporting more like double, but it just depends. There was basically a glitch in the BIOS that was causing hefty battery drain for no apparent reason. I don't know all the details behind it. What I do know is that it's fixed with the BIOS update, and the battery life on this, I will use it all night watching videos. I've used it for probably 6-7 hours at a time before, and I'm still at like 40%. It's honestly really good battery life. The 1080p screen, of course, is helping with that a lot, as well as keeping it at a fairly low brightness. So keep in mind, I was in a dark room at the time, so brightness was low, and it's a 1080p screen, and I was just watching 1080p YouTube videos. So there are more stressful situations that are going to use up your battery a lot quicker on this, but still the battery life is excellent. It is the best that I have experienced in a 13-inch form factor. In fact, it's probably the best battery life I've ever experienced on a laptop other than some Chromebooks. I reviewed you can actually see it up in the little eye. I always forget which side it goes on, but you can see it up in the little eye. I reviewed a Chromebook. It was a 14-inch Chromebook from Acer. The battery life was just mind-blowing on that. We're talking like 13-14 hours of actual screen-on usage. So, but that's a lower power laptop running Chrome OS, so it's not a full Windows machine. If you're comparing just Windows machines, this is about as good as I've experienced. The MacBook might be a little bit better, but that's not a Windows machine. But point being, that's something that's a little bit in competition with this. Might have a little better battery life, but you're definitely not going to be disappointed. Just if you are disappointed with the battery life, make sure you go and check for that BIOS update, because that's probably why. Speaking of battery though, last thing I'd like to go over relating to that is the incredibly tiny power brick. So not only is the battery life great, and in fact there have been times where I will literally leave my charger here overnight when I go somewhere because I know this isn't going to die on me in the day. I'll just take it with me. And that's a nice feeling to have, where I can just unplug it and walk away, and I don't really have to think about it because this isn't going to die on me. But anyway, tiny power brick, if you do take it with you, so you could put this in a little sleeve, you could put the brick next to it. I've got mine with all the cables rubber banded next to it because unfortunately it doesn't have a good wrapping system. I do wish that Dell had a little Velcro wrap or something like that on it, but just grab a rubber band is what I'd recommend. But very small, very lightweight. I think it's like a 60 watt or something like that. So I mean, you know, it doesn't need a lot of power for the Ultrabook SKU processors. So in conclusion, this machine is incredible. I'd say if I were rating it out of 10, I'd probably give it a 9. The only thing really being knocked off for is the right down here, the webcam. Having that down there is a big disappointment, but other than that, there's very little that I have to complain about this machine. You know, there are things that are better. There are certain aspects of other machines that are better. Some do have a little better battery life. Some do have a nicer screen, or if you get the nicer screen model of this, you know, there are some that, you know, there are some that are lighter weight. But it's a very good all-rounder, and I'm really happy that Dell, I think, is sticking with what people really want. They're innovating, but they're innovating in a productivity-oriented direction. They're not innovating in, here's this cool little thing that we can brag about so that everybody buys our machine. That's not what this is about. I feel like what Dell's been doing recently is how can we actually make this a better machine for the end user, not a bunch of better gimmicks so that people are more likely to purchase it. It ends up being just such a wonderful machine that I can give it an incredible recommendation. I can tell you that you should go buy one of these. If you're looking for an Ultrabook that isn't huge and that has enough power to do most of what you're trying to do, go with this. If you're looking for a 13-inch Ultrabook, this is, in my opinion, as good as it gets as of now. Unless you're looking for like a 2-in-1 or something, which there is an XPS 2-in-1. I have not had any experience with that, so I cannot give a rating on that. But I'm very happy that Dell has been looking at the performance and at the build quality aspects of things on a machine more so than lots of little fun doohickeys. So, you know, good on you, Dell. Stick with this formula. Don't move away from making a machine that the power user wants to use, because right now, that's what people are looking for, because they're sick of, oh, hey, it's thinner, but battery life's garbage, or whatever, for example. So thank you, Dell, and I just want to say thank you, everybody, for watching. Let me know your opinion. Let me know if you're going to buy one. I'll try and put a link in the description so that you can purchase one, but thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and definitely check out our forums and our website, which are also linked in the description. We've got a bunch of links in the description that you guys can check out to get in contact with us and stuff like that. Anyway, thank you, everybody, for watching.